Hi Shadies, it's me, Eddie Stevens, Rugby Ranter Banter. I'm back in my little shed. Now, I do appreciate, if you've never seen this shed before, that it does look a lot like the kind of shed that, were you to break into it and pull this couch away from the wall, you might find a stash of half a dozen pairs of soiled underwear. Piss stains, shit stains, other stains, and you find it and be like, what the fuck is this? Does the person who owns this shed, have they been hiding their filthy underwear here because they're ashamed of it? Or are they stealing underwear? Because it is women's underwear back there. Have they been stealing this from a neighbor, and like, is it dirty underwear and that's why they were attracted to it? Or did they then wear it and get their own stains on it? What the fuck is wrong with the person who owns this shed? You could get that from the appearance of this. This is weird artwork. There's egg cartons on the wall. And it's a weird vibe, generally. And I'm not helping things, am I? But here's the thing. I could prove to you that there's nothing weird like that behind this couch. But to be honest with you, I don't want to move this couch because I don't know what's back there. And I live in New Mexico, and there's weird creatures here. I'm worried it might be dead back there. One time I found a perfectly mummified little mouse corpse. It was almost cute, but sort of repulsive at the same time. So I don't know what could be back there. I don't want to look. I'm never going to look, okay? I haven't looked back there in years. But welcome to Rugby Ranter Banter. Today I'm going to be doing a video about the new England, I almost said Saxons. It's not a Saxon squad, is it? The England A team has returned. Back in the day, it disappeared for a while, and for a short period of time, the England A team was known as the Saxons, but that was deemed offensive. They got rid of it because Saxon rhymes with, or sounds like, sex on, and we don't want any sex on during rugby, right? That's one thing I think that the politically correct woke mob and I agree on. Don't have sex during rugby. Actually, I haven't thought that through. It might be fine. Doesn't matter. We're going to talk about the new England A squad that has been announced for a fixture against Portugal. Now, what I want to do really quickly is just discuss this squad, talk about some notable omissions, talk about some notable inclusions, and then name a squad that I think would be best to play against Portugal. Now, bear in mind, most of us, if we're honest, know nothing about Portuguese rugby except how they performed in the World Cup. And they were the surprise package in the World Cup. They actually looked really good. Having said that, I know they also very recently lost to a very low-ranked nation. Having said that, who knows what kind of a team they put out? You know, with these lower-ranked teams, sometimes, you know, very often, they don't have a lot of depth. So beyond their first 23-man squad, there's not a lot that they're working with. Now, for all we know, for this big loss they had recently, they may have put out a second-string team of dipshit loser nobodies. The fact of the matter is they'll be full strength against this A squad, so they'll be competitive, you would think, but really, we should expect a big win, and I think we will get that. But just looking at this squad right now, some notable omissions. Now, when you're looking at an A squad, we haven't had one in a while, right? It's been a few years since England had an A squad. But typically, you get a mixture of exciting young players that maybe haven't played that much in the Premiership, but they need some exposure to higher level rugby, international rugby. You get a few of them. And then you get players that are on the periphery of the England squad, players that have been impressing in the Premiership but haven't been given a chance yet. And the England administration, the setup, in this case Steve Borthwick, would want to see how they do on this. I mean, is it a higher level than the Premiership? Probably not in terms of the quality of the opposition, but there is another dynamic to international rugby. Just seeing them in an England shirt, playing in what is technically an international, could be helpful. And then you'll get a couple of players sometimes who are established, been around a while, just to add a bit of stability, and maybe they've had some injuries and they need some rehabilitation. That's the kind of thing you normally see. And this squad is sort of like that in its makeup, but it's a bit strange. There are some glaring omissions. Right off the bat, when I looked at this squad, I thought, why is there no Adam Radwan? Adam Radwan, I can't keep talking about Adam Radwan. He had a couple of chances with England and scored in both of them and looked pretty good. But there's obviously something about him they don't like. Now, a lot of people have said he needs to leave Newcastle if he wants to get actual, attention from Borthwick and get included in any of these squads. But you would think this is exactly the kind of match that he would be useful in. So maybe he's injured or something and I don't know about it, but I was surprised he wasn't there. Sticking with the back three, I was surprised that Joe Thokanasiga wasn't there. Although you could make the argument he's already been in the England setup so much, what would anyone learn from it? Is there any point? More on that in a minute. And again with the back three, I would have liked to have seen Joe Carpenter. Excuse me, Joe Carpenter there, Sale fullback, who looks amazing. And again, this I think would have been a perfect opportunity to see what he can do. And one person who's not there but can't be there, but I was disappointed to not see, is Louis Liner, who I really, really like from Quins, but now he's Italian. So that's the back three. Just looking through in the back row, a lot of people surprised to not see Zach Mercer there. Now, there was a very interesting article in which I think it was Conor O'Shea was interviewed seemingly to explain why Zach Mercer wasn't there, but it sort of covers every position, everybody. It was kind of a bunch of gobbledygook. It was kind of a bunch of nonsense, and there was not a lot of substance to what he was saying. What he said was, in a nutshell, Zach Mercer's not there, but this squad has players that we think could have a chance one day, and we want to see how they do. And then people who are right on the periphery of the England squad. And then there are some players that aren't there who actually would be ahead of them in line to play for England. So it's like, if that's the case, does that mean... So looking at the back row again, Alfie Barbery is there. Barbery is a guy that most of us thought should be in the England squad to start with. There are a few diehard Zach Mercer fans, right? But most people agree that Barbery is ahead of him in the pecking order. But by the logic that Conor O'Shea used, Alfie Barbery is in this squad, but Zach Mercer isn't. So is Zach Mercer being considered ahead of Barbery? I don't know. It gets weirder because we've also got an established England player in Little Harry Randall, who was basically looking like England's first choice scrum half a couple of seasons ago. Now he's kind of fallen out of favour. He's back in. And then even more interestingly, sorry, I've lost my train of thought. Who was I just talking about? Little Harry Randall. Oh, and then interestingly also, Nick Ezekwe is in there. Ezekwe has been in and around the England squad. In fact, he was in the squad, the wider squad, pre-Six Nations, but had to leave the setup because of some kind of illness, I think. So I'm really happy to see him in this squad just because it means that whatever it was apparently wasn't as bad as we thought it could have been. But also, why is he there? What are they going to... I guess they just want to see a bit more of him. It could reflect really well on him and Little Harry Randall in that what's the point of putting them in this squad unless you're thinking they could potentially be in the England squad? Having said that, maybe it's just for a bit of stability and experience. I don't know. Another couple of notable omissions that bothered me. First, one of my favourites, Harry Thacker. Some people think he's too small, but he's short and very stout, like a little teapot. And I would have liked to have seen him in this squad. And Curtis Langdon, I don't think he's still serving a ban, is he? He's a guy that a lot of us were saying should have been in the Six Nations squad. So weird that he's not in this squad. Does that mean he's actually ahead of this squad? I don't even know. Like, just from talking about it to you right now, I've become less clear about what the point of this is. Anyway, let's talk about the squad. Here's what I just talked about the squad. Let's name a squad to face Portugal. Okay? And I don't want this to be too long of a video, so I'm going to get cracking on this. So, starting at loose head, the obvious choice to start is Finn Baxter, Harlequins loose head. A player who kind of this is going to sound a bit silly, but he sort of quietly burst on the scene. And what I mean by that is he came on, he played in I think it was a Champions Cup match against a decent opposition and won man of the match. Now, he's understudy to Joe Marler. And I think that if he were a tight head, that kind of a performance would have put him in the main England squad already, because we're so short on talent and tight head has been such a huge problem position. I feel like he's a bit unfortunate that he plays loose head, and when he did burst on the scene, we were kind of fully stocked. We had, his mentor at Harlequins, Joe Marler, and Ellis Genge playing really well. And at that point, a lot of people wanting Val Rapava-Ruskin to be in there. Val Rapava-Ruskin, I think, is dead now because we haven't heard about him in a couple of years, I feel like. And then there was also Bevan Rodd, a player I really love, but I'm on the record for saying probably a luxury England can't afford in terms of we need someone who can be really, 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 really solid in the scrums and have a bit more size. Finn Baxter ticks all the boxes, and it reminds me with him, I think I read somewhere, someone said he should leave Quins so he's not playing understudy to Joe Marler, but I think that would be a mistake for the same reason that back in the day, Jamie George was playing understudy to the amazing world-class Skulk Brits for years. And we were worried, a lot of England fans were worried that it was actually halting his development and his progress because he wasn't getting enough game time. Well, now he's the England captain and he's one of the most established and consistent performers in this England team. So I think Finn Baxter is going to be in a similar position, learning under Joe Marler. It's not a bad place to be. Looking forward to seeing him play there. At hooker, as I said, I would have liked to have seen Curtis Langdon and to a slightly lesser extent, little Harry Thacker. He's quite little for a hooker. But they're not in the squad. But from the hookers available, it's a what's the word? A no-brainer. Fucking hell. It's a no-brainer. It's Blamire. Blamire has to start at hooker here. He's already been in the England setup. And by the way, he's looked really good for Newcastle, a shit team. The opposite is true of Blamire, as was the case with Finn Baxter, where I said he's good staying at the club he's at in the position he's in. Jamie Blamire, first choice at a club that is perpetually losing. And it's probably Adam Radwan's issue as well. They need to get out of that club. Blamire to start, a great player. Tight head, very interesting. I've just said, we all know tight head is England's perennial problem position. Now, there's a couple of decent tight heads here. One of them, very, very good, but very inexperienced. One of them, very, very good, very experienced, but he's not actually English. So it's a bit of an issue for me, because I do like English players to play for England. I suppose that's racist. But, before you freak out and start screaming for my head, I think I would start at tight head Yosefa Scott. I think he's New Zealand born. I could be wrong about that. But Exeter tight head. He's bloody big and he's pretty consistent. And then the other option would have been James Harper from Sale, who I actually think has more potential. I've really liked what I've seen from him at Sale. To be honest with you, you could almost... I think the right thing to do would be play both of them for half a match. And I don't really care which order you do that in. But I do think if Borthwick had to pick one of these right now, he'd have to go with Yosefa Scott, because we've just seen a lot more from him. And his maturity probably wins. But definitely Harper is one for the future, isn't he? Second row, tricky, because I'm not a huge fan of Nick Ezekwe. I've never really understood what it is that people see in him that makes him a conversation, or keeps him in the conversation for England. But since he is there, you take advantage of his experience. He is good in the lineouts. Some of these other locks are very inexperienced. I think you kind of have to start Nick Ezekwe. And it's a close call to be his partner in the second row, but I'm a massive fan of Ben Bamber, mainly because at 6'9" and just about 20 stone, he's absolutely fucking massive. And he has a rugby league background, and I've been really impressed with the little bits that I've seen from him, and I want to see more. In the back row, Tom Pearson, the most talked about of the players in the squad here, I think. Well, Pearson and Barberry, I suppose. I think both of them need to be in this squad because they are real contenders for the main England team, the first team. So I think I would have Pearson at 6, Barberry, of course, at 8, and at open side, an omission I forgot to mention, Will Evans isn't there. I thought this would be a perfect testing ground for him. I've been disappointed in the lack of success he's had with breaking into the England team. But what we do have in this squad is a player on a very similar level in terms of ball snaffling, jackling ability, who plays for a much worse team and still stands out, and that's Guy Pepper. A lot of people are excited about Guy Pepper. It's a perfect game. With the players in this squad, I really am looking forward to seeing what he does at open side with a team that aren't going to be losing constantly. So yeah, back row, Tom Pearson. He's underachieved for me, but he's started to look a little bit better, and we know what he does offer. He needs to prove himself. He needs to have a good game in this match. Scrum half, of course, you're going to have little Harry Randall, and I'll probably make him captain because I love little Harry Randall, and I love his leadership, and I love the way he talks and the way he speeds up the game. There's only one other scrum half in the squad anyway, and that is Englefield, who all I know about him is that he has a big boot, looks decent, but he also somehow resembles Beavis and Butthead from the cartoon Beavis and Butthead, and I hope he doesn't hear this, and I don't want him to take offense to it. It's a fact. Little Harry Randall starting. I like to use his full name, Little Harry Randall. You know the nursery rhyme, don't you? Little Harry Randall, running with his candle. Careful, little fella, or you'll spill it on your sandal. Everybody knows it. Everybody thinks about it every time they see him play, and it's infuriating. In the midfield, it's so easy because there's not a lot of options. Now, right off the bat, Ollie Hartley of Saracens hasn't had a lot of game time, but he is pretty much an out-and-out inside centre. I looked at the stats, and he's played 89% of the time. He can play outside, but he's definitely predominantly an inside centre, and he's a big fucker. And what I've seen of him, very little, but what I have seen of him at Saracens, he looks really good. And it's very important that we see him here. And I could see him being, like, very quickly promoted into the main England setup because he looks like exactly what we need. And another player with a lot of talent, and I hope I pronounce his name properly, Massey White from Sale, have him outside him. He plays predominantly outside centre. He's played 75% of his time in the centres has been at 13. I haven't seen much of him. What I have seen, I haven't been that impressed, except when I've seen him playing at under 20 level where he looked really good, and I'm hoping that he can bring that kind of level to this match. But it'd be very fun to see the two young centres playing together. Both a lot of talent, both a lot of promise. There's not really anyone else that you would seriously look at in this squad to play in the centres, so I think it's pretty obvious that's who they're going to start with. And then in the back three, very difficult to call because Ollie Hassel-Collins has been in the England team, and I feel like he's a bit of a victim of when we hype up a player too much, there is an inevitable backlash and people start like underrating that player. Ollie Hassel-Collins, everybody's favourite flavour a couple years ago, and now no one really wants to even talk about him. I think he's still really good. I would have Hassel-Collins on one wing, and then huge favourite of the Rugby brethren, Caden Murley can start on the other wing. I actually really like Caden Murley, and I was shouting about him years before he was even like regularly getting to start for Harlequins. Now I feel like people are a bit too excited about him. I need to see him play more, and I need to see more consistency from him, but this is a perfect match for him. It's a little bit harsh, so I would have Hassel-Collins on one wing and Caden Murley on the other. It's kind of unfair on Ollie Slightholme, because Ollie Slightholme, despite having eyes that are too close together and therefore suggestive of some kind of inbreeding and therefore a lack of mental faculty. He's actually very, very good all-round, very fast, very strong, and very smart. Like, he can play fullback, and he makes good decisions. In fact, I'm changing my mind. I'm starting Slightholme ahead of Ollie Hassel-Collins. How can you not reward his club form? I think he's looked better than Hassel-Collins has. So, Slightholme on one wing, Caden Murley on the other, and at fullback, the only intelligent option is Josh Hodge. Josh Hodge, who at the beginning of the season lit up the Premiership. He was amazing. He got injured. He's been out forever, but he's come back and he looks like he's picking up where he left off, looking very dangerous in attack. I need to see him at fullback. And then on the bench, some of these I've kind of already said, but to cover hooker, there's a couple of other hookers in the squad, and the only one I really have seen any of is Sam Riley of Quins, who's young but looks good. And I'll put him on the bench. Covering loose head, I hope I say his name right, Tarek Hafar. I've seen him play for Saints, and I have liked what I've seen. I haven't seen enough to think that he should be in this position, but from the players available, sure, why not? Put him on the bench. I'm not too worried about loose head anyway, you know? And I'm really excited about Finn Baxter. Covering tight head, I already said this, have James Harper of Sale. And then covering second row, I do really like... I've forgotten his name now. There's another lock that I really like, but ahead of him, I think you kind of have to put Russ Tuima in there because, like Ben Bamba, he's fucking massive, and I really want to see what he can do. We've seen him do very well for Exeter, and he can also play in the back row, and I'd like to see him get some time here. So Tuima off the bench, and then covering the back row, I would go with Greg Fisselau of Exeter. In fact, I'd rather have Barbary in the main England squad and see Fisselau start in this match. But since Barbary's there, I want to see him start. But I really like Fisselau. He's not that big, or at least he doesn't look that big, but he's very dynamic. So Fisselau on the bench. As I said earlier, Englefield is the only other scrum half, I think, in the squad, so he has to be on the bench. Now, I never said fly half, did I? Sorry about that. Fly half, there's three options. One of them, I can't even remember his name. He's very, very young, and I don't care to even talk about him. I'm sure he's great. But the two options I looked at, one of my personal favourites, Charlie Atkinson, who I loved at Wasps, and I said is the next big thing and will one day be a regular England starter. Now, he's one of the few Wasps players who didn't benefit from them going under. Other players like Alfie Barbary went on to bigger and better things. Did he? Well, if you look at Worcester, a few of their players are doing way better now. But Charlie Atkinson has kind of been a bench warmer and hasn't had a lot of opportunity and hasn't really developed in the way I thought he would. But I still rate him and I still want to see him one day play for England. So it's a tight call between him and Jamie Shilcock, another guy I love, a great fantasy rugby player, by the way, because he's so versatile and he can kick points. But you could put Jamie Shilcock on the bench because he's like the ultimate super sub, isn't he? He can cover fly half, wing, fullback, and probably centre. I'm not sure. I'm pretty confident he could. But, you know, I would start Shilcock because I think that he's proven himself again and again and again, and it is nice to reward domestic form. So I would have had Jamie Shilcock starting at 10, and then Atkinson can be on the bench. And as I said earlier, I switched Hassel-Collins out for Ollie Slightholme, so I would have Hassel-Collins on the bench. So there. I hope that all made sense. And I hope the sound quality isn't too terrible. I'm just using my phone's microphone. I bought a fancy one, and it actually makes it sound worse. I don't know what to do about that. But like and subscribe and all that shit, and tell me if you disagree with what I said. I don't really care. Right into the